the yajna and doing the rituals and giving a name and that, walk away. So it means taking care of people. Shh. It means taking care of people. So, from the get-go, that's something that I tried to my capacity to do. And it's like parenting. You too much is too much, and too little is too little. So you have to be able to stand back and let people grow at the same time, support and encourage and help. And when they have a mishap, they fall and scrape their knee, you help them get back up and carry on, learn lessons from the scriptures, and sometimes the hard way. So your other question?
The second question you just answered. The second question is, when and where did you accept disciples for the first time?
New York.
What was the experience like for you when, for the first time, given initiation to someone which is nervous?
Yeah, I was nervous. I mean, what does that mean? It can mean different things to nervousness can mean different, feel and be exhibited differently by different people. My nervousness was, I guess, primarily, I wasn't really sure. Other than this is a service that some persons who I have regard for were asking me to do this service. Like many of us may do some services like that in the first time. Like many of the devotees in the room probably have had the experience the first Bhagavad Gita class you gave or something. What'd you feel? You probably felt nervous. So one of those. Something else?
Yes. The last question is, what does it mean to you when taking someone as a disciple? What efforts and commitment are you prepared to make?
What effort and commitment am I prepared to make? Lifelong. I've also learned that the commitment I'm prepared to make is not, in principle, is not what happens. In principle, it should be on the terms of Guru and Krishna, and often it's not on the terms of Guru and Krishna, it's on the terms of the disciple. So I've learned to recognize that. It's not. So there certainly are others that it's not like that, but the rule is more the other direction. The commitment is, conditional, and the conditions are, diverse, depending upon the circumstances of their life, and depending upon the challenges that they're meeting, and depending. But is Uma here? Yes? Yeah. I remember one Vyasa Puja homage that she spoke, recognizing from her perspective how how committed I am to different devotees. I remember that because sometimes it's recognized, sometimes it's not recognized, but she was recognizing it. And there's been a recent experience that we both shared where somebody just kind of just disappeared. And, I didn't disappear. And so forth and so on and so forth and so on. It's something, reading that section from Antya-lila chapter 4, where Sanatana Goswami is told by Mahaprabhu that how glorious is that spiritual master that never lets their disciple go away. And if they go away, they go find them and drag them by the hair and bring them back. So I didn't drag this other devotee by the hair. I just gave them the space that they needed. And it was a long period of time. And they came back. It was like, phew. So it's regardless of, it's not the same, excuse me, not the same, but it's something similar to the regard that Krishna has for living entities that come to this material world and turn away from him, and Krishna doesn't leave them alone. He stays in their heart and does what he does. So the commitment to a disciple is like that, regardless. At the same time, then recognizing the freedom, the free will of a disciple. So rather than being demanding, being encouraging and inviting, and in certain circumstances, drawing some lines, being strict, etc., etc. But I very much like the way that Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj describes how Lord Chaitanya transformed others by sneha, by his affection. And then the relationships are based upon that. That's also the later part of that chapter. I like that chapter very much. So different relationships based upon different feelings towards Guru and Krishna from the disciple. That also can change. It's, fluid and dynamic. That doesn't change the commitment, it's just how it's exhibited may change. Adjusted according to the person and what they're going through and so forth. Sri Radhika's enthusiastic over here.
Guru Maharaj, I was very moved by your description this morning of how raw Draupadi's feelings were, and yet she was able to have such degree of empathy towards Kripi. And I'm also coming to understand that our outward exhibition of empathy or our expression of empathy does not have to be stereotypical. And it seems like our psychophysical nature very much influences how we exhibit empathy in the community of devotees. So I'm thinking of Bhima, who is also a pure devotee. We know all 5 Pandavas are. And all appear in a pure devotee. So because he's Krishna conscious, I'm sure he's all heart. So how to understand Bhima?
Keep going.
How are we to understand Bhima's empathy in this situation? It seems, Draupadi and Yudhishthir, they're very gentle natured, so they're exhibiting their empathy in a certain way. And I'm sure Bhima's empathic too.
You're the empathic gal.
Wish, Maharaj, with your blessing.
Well, let's go back to your question from yesterday about transcendental emotions. Transcendental empathy may exhibit in a Kshatriya and discipline them. Now it may look because we're accustomed to discipline him, coming from somebody that's not transcendentalist. But let's just assume that Bhima is a transcendentalist, just like when it's described, when Krishna came to Hastinapur, among the others that cried, Bhima cried. Just seeing Krishna and embracing Krishna, he was sobbing. So he had that capacity, but he's a Kshatriya. And this person is to be punished. Now, he may not have been looking at the big picture of what's the best way to punish him. As a Kshatriya, the best way to punish him, he's killed 5 sleeping children. One of them is his child. Sleeping children, beheaded them. This person needs to be relieved of that sin, and the measure for relieving of that sin is he should be at once killed. So, not just retaliation, but Kshatriya spirited, pure devotee spirited, pure devotee driven. It's also compassion. May not look like Yudhishthir's. Okay.
Another question.
Stopa Krishna, you're next. Go ahead.
This pastime that you read from today is one of my
Ramayan-like pastimes, right?
It's one of my favorite pastimes, and Draupadi is one of my heroes. I take a lot of inspiration from her, and in the last couple of years especially, she's been someone that I found a lot of strength from. And that pastime in the 7th chapter, it seems it's like camphor and sandalwood. The more you grind, the more fragrant it becomes. And each time we hear it, there's always some new taste or new lesson from it. And as you were so wonderfully narrating it this morning, a thought or an inspiration occurred, which I'm hoping you might kindly elaborate if you'd like to. That Draupadi was so kind and forgiving to
Unbelievable.
Ashwatthama.
I don't think I could do that.
I mean, but the interesting piece there is before that incident, Arjuna loudly proclaims that I will bring the perpetrator's head and you can stand on it and take your bath or something like that.
When she's performing
The ritual.
the rituals during their funeral,
Yeah.
you can stand on his head.
And Draupadi didn't stop Arjuna at that time and say, no, don't go, he's the son of our guru. But Arjuna actually captured Ashwatthama and brought him. And that's when she says it.
Well, maybe the timing wasn't right.
I'm sure, but I'm just sort of seeing if there's some other insight, or some additional insight, because Ashwatthama, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud that I haven't processed it fully. It's not that Ashwatthama was given an easy escape, that if she had stopped Arjuna at all, then Ashwatthama could not hear the forgiving nature of Draupadi, or Ashwatthama wouldn't have gotten the befitting, I don't know, punishment or correction or whatever. But it's just there's some
Yes,
sweetness
all of
in
the
it.
above. All of the above. I mean, that's the Krishna's hand, the unseen hand of Krishna answers some of those things and others. As you were speaking, I was thinking of some others. But it's, at the moment, whether Arjuna would even be able to capture him, and maybe she, Draupadi, wasn't considering the consequences until she saw him tied up in ropes like a criminal, the way that it was. Something like how Bali Maharaj was tied up in ropes, and then there was this hue and cry, well, what, wait a minute, he surrendered everything. And so the visual circumstance and standing in front of her maybe awoke all those thoughts and emotions. You're asking, is there some deeper, lesson or meaning or something where we might take from this, the sequence? That's your question, right?
Yes, and just sort of
Churning the topic. My thought is going to this. There, from the early part of the whole narration, Prabhupada gives a clue that says Krishna wanted to test Arjuna's religious principles. Test doesn't mean this, doesn't mean that, doesn't mean the other thing. To highlight and exhibit to others the excellence of Arjuna in terms of religious principles. And so that exhibition of religious principles had to wait. It had to wait until other things happened. And then for Draupadi to say what Draupadi said, Krishna to say what Krishna said, and everyone to say what everyone says, for the purpose of orchestrating Krishna's testing or exhibiting to the world or heightening the transcendental virtue of Arjuna, that he actually understood Krishna's intention, which looked like it was different than what he was saying. But that he should be killed is as good as killing him was to do what he did without killing him, without, absolutely, or the worldly sense of killing him. So my response to your question is, is there something deeper? Not necessarily. It's just part of a flow that brings about what Krishna wanted. I can't think of something that is to be taken from, she didn't right away exhibit the same mood and message to Arjuna. It could have stopped him in his tracks because there were other things that were to happen. So she was inspired to be silent first. At least one of the deeper reasons is there's a purpose, there's another purpose of Krishna to be fulfilled, which required her not saying that at that time, but saying it later. So that he did get appropriately punished, or at least, almost the equivalent. For one who's been honored, dishonor is worse than death. So he was put to worse than death, but without killing him. For different, for reasons of Krishna, not necessarily only the reasons of Draupadi. It's kind of the situation is reverse in terms of, Krishna was ready to kill Rukmi. And Rukmini intervened, please don't kill my brother. But, what was her brother up to? And she could easily have, been really, really ticked off with her brother. She was going to marry him to Shishupal. Against her wishes, against his and her father's wishes, against everyone's wishes, except his own, because of his enmity towards Krishna. And she knew all that. So, but she's the one that stopped, and then Krishna stopped until Krishna did what Krishna did. And gave Balaram the chance to do what Balaram did, and so forth. So impetus to facilitate the flow of Krishna's pastimes, each devotee doing or not doing things to facilitate Krishna's pastimes. Anything else?
Yes, thank you, Maharaj.
Still for Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. 2 questions, unrelated. We would like to see, at least I would like to understand, Maharaj, you have so many disciples, so many states. How it's a compliment, and I'm intrigued. How do you remember every disciple's name?
You're embarrassing me.
That was not the intent, Maharaj. I just was wanting to understand.
I'm being honest.
Okay, let's move on to
No,
this.
but it's not just disciples. Even people, even God brothers with whom I have some relationship. I'm really bad with names, and there's this phenomena as one gets older. You're getting older, right? Memory starts to fade. So I don't always remember names, not just disciples' names, not just because of the numbers of disciples. I mean, I could just, within the past 24 hours, I was trying to remember a particular disciple. I won't go into the detail. And the name of that disciple came to me because it's there. Just because of time and space, not because of numbers. And we have had many interactions not so long ago, even a couple of years ago, but just because, of the various factors of aging, and I'm just really bad with names. Just really bad with names.
So the second question, Maharaj, is, do
Is it-
you have any plans of
Going
doing,
back to Godhead.
No, doing.
I thought I'd get some laughs from that one.
Without understanding the logistics of yatras, are there any plans on the cards to do yatras, Kedarnath, Badrinath? I don't
Yes.
know. Haribo. Could you please expand on that, Maharaj?
Well, one of the things that, because there's somebody right now who is preparing a script, which places we'll visit and what are the highlights of the places that we'll visit, and then looking into in details what's a realistic number, because those places can't accommodate, even in the best of circumstances, they can't accommodate the numbers that we usually have. And therefore, I was planning to not broadcast the fact that, because I thought, oh gosh, what are you going to do? First come, first served, or I have my favorites, or how are you going to? So I don't know how to do it, logistically how to do it. But there's a period of time when it's dangerous to go, and there's a period of time when it's ideal to go, and when it's ideal to go, it's packed. It's not a good time to go. Not only accommodations are packed, but everything's packed. We were just in Vrindavan, and it was just horrible. I mean, the flavor of Vrindavan was covered by the multitude of, 4 times the number of people that would otherwise be in Vrindavan. It was uncomfortable. The sweetness was not the same. So,
Thank you, Maharaj. More to come.
I'll tell you if you don't tell anybody.
Ramesh, do we want to take online now or?
Whatever you all want to do. I'm your servant.
Mukunda has the microphone, so after him.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Ah,
Just
I was looking out there and it's
just a question. His question was also jogging something in me. I was curious if you ever have an aspiration to, I guess it's maybe anti-preaching, but do you ever have an aspiration to settle in one particular place or dham, or is there a place
Yeah.
you would ideally like to be?
Yeah. I mean, it's notional. The three things. Three things. What I've been doing is what my thought process has been, which is as long as I have health that permits me to move around and follow in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada to do that. My age is what it is, and Krishna has given me the strength and the health, etc. So, go. Second is there's an urge, and it's also a little bit on the private side. So please don't send me emails saying, "Oh yes, do this." To do some writing. It's something I've been wanting to do, and some persons have been encouraging me. So some shift this year. I'm thinking to do a break and just not travel and not do all that stuff and just focus on writing. And the writing plan is seminars that were given on intricate topics, have them transcribed, and then edit so that it's publishable. Because a lot of my time is spent in preparing for seminars on different topics. And, during periods of my life as a Hare Krishna devotee, I selected some topics that I find, A, they're intriguing, and B, they're a little complicated, so it takes time to sort them all out to make it accessible to an everyday devotee audience. So writing. So on the one hand, something that can stand the test of time is something that's meaningful and substantial, at the same time is accessible. I mean, I think it's okay. I can use Devamrita Maharaj's name. He requested me, could you do a book on a Tattva Sandarbha that's accessible for devotee audience? Because Gopi Pranadhana Prabhu's book is written for scholars. I mean, it's not only for scholars, but he knew that that's a main audience he was addressing. So it could withstand the bullet shots of scholar people. And, it's got substance. But some devotees, because he's a BBT trustee now, and that's one of the projects he wants to work on, making books available that are a little involved for, just the everyday devotee audience. But, my nature is I don't want to dumb it down. I'd like to have refinements. Anyway, so that's type of thing. It's the second part of some shift in what I've been doing to do some of that, and what it's going to look like is not really clear, but it's something that I feel I should do and want to do. and logistically how to do it. Just like go offline somewhere. And specifically, my thought was to go to an Ayurvedic clinic for a month and let people know, write to me after a month. If you have an emergency, go to somebody else. Oh, but it's important. Okay, good. Go to somebody else. For a month, give me a month. And then just, because otherwise. And then a third is, it's notional only, but, spending more in as aging, etc. Vrindavan. What that might look like, I don't know, but that's just a notion. I have a deep feeling for Vrindavan, a love for Vrindavan. And our acharyas speak about it often, write about it often. They encourage it regularly. And it resonates. So that's distant, notional, but devotional at some point in time. And, likely, this, somewhere back there says, maybe for some periods of time, and then go back and do other stuff, and then for some periods of time, do it. I'm, an incrementalist, rather than just jump in the pool and stay in Vrindavan forever. Something like what Dandara Maharaj does. He spends substantial time, then he goes, does other things, and goes back in substantial time, and has deep love for Vrindavan. Okay.
We'll do one online question from Sachi Mata Mataji. That's okay. Maharaj is asking, during the time of Ashwatthama, when he killed the 5 sons of Draupadi, it was after the Kurukshetra war. So Krishna was around 100 years old, and so were the Pandavas, she's guessing, and Draupadi, because they were around the same age. So her main question is, why was the killing of the 5 sons described as, quote, infanticide? Were they that young?
Yes. I don't know what their age was, but they were young. They were not just siblings and children of, but they were young. Now, but what age, I don't know. We don't hear about them being on the battlefield, like Abhimanyu was on the battlefield and he was 16. But, what their age was, I don't know.
I think Mataji had an angle to her question where if Draupadi and the Pandavas were around like a century old, how were the children so little?
I don't know. Anything else in the room? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Please bear with me while I try to formulate this question. Yesterday in one of the lectures you mentioned the test from Krishna does not stop, necessarily continues. And that seemed to did not strike a chord in me. It felt like, wow.
Yeah, that's fear or what?
Not a fear, but it's like, would not the relationship at some point grow into a trustworthy relationship?
Oh,
where
yeah.
the
Test doesn't mean like the material kind.
Mhm.
Was Mahaprabhu testing Sanatana Goswami without affection, without mature, loving relationship? Was Krishna testing Arjuna without a mature, loving relationship? They're eternal associates. So the test doesn't mean I don't trust you. That's not I don't love you. I want to see if I should love you. I'm going to test you out. That's not what it means.
I guess I don't understand what that test means, perhaps.
Well, it's highlighting and bringing to the foreground the glory of someone.
Okay.
And strengthening the singular attachment in Sanatana Goswami's case, in Bali Maharaj's case. Vamana said later, I just wanted to show everybody, just see. Even he gave everything, and he's treated with, externally speaking, like a hardened criminal. You don't deal like that with somebody unless they're like really a bad. Bind them. You've seen the paintings. It's like his whole body is in a straitjacket of ropes. Only a bad. So, and no objection. Just see. It was a test, but it's not like he didn't know how he would respond. He wanted everyone to see. Just see. And he's so dear to me, I'll become his personal servant. I'll be his gatekeeper, his doorkeeper. I'll guard his door for life. It's not, it's a different, the character of test is different. Or prikshita, examining. It's not like he didn't know. It's exactly what Prabhupada said. It's not like Krishna didn't know Arjuna's character or his understanding of religious principles. He wanted the world to see.
Okay.
That should be the takeaway.
Okay, thank you.
And at the end, Arjuna is all the more feeling, I just want to embrace Krishna because look what he's the challenge that he's given me so that something that's deeper inside could come out. That is, knowing what Krishna wanted, even he was saying something else. And knowing that that's what Krishna wanted was something other than what he was saying. There's a nice pastime like this. We heard this over the winter retreat here in the Naperville temple, right here in this temple. Shivananda Sain is a dear devotee of Mahaprabhu. We don't hear so much about him, but it's actually in multiple places. He had 3 sons. One of his sons was Kavi Karnapur. We know a lot about Kavi Karnapur. But his eldest son was Chaitanya Das. So there's a little passage. During one time when after Mahaprabhu had come back from his 2 years of travel, the devotees, the brahmanas particularly, were inviting him to have lunch. And Shivananda Sain invited him for lunch. And he purchased the finest of Jagannath Prasad and gave quantities of Jagannath Prasad to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who overate. Look at this, he doesn't have control of his senses. But it was a pastime. And so he had indigestion. And Chaitanya Das was a Brahmana, the son of Shivananda Sain, and he was the next day. And he didn't have all those opulent items from Jagannath. He had items that one would feed to somebody who has indigestion. It lists the items. In Mahaprabhu, there's a line in Chaitanya Charitamrita. How elevated is that disciple, speaking of Chaitanya Das as a disciple, who understands the mind of his spiritual master and does his service accordingly without having to be told. Just he knows the mind. That's a very elevated person. So Arjuna had that quality. He understood the mind of Krishna, although he was saying that, it was this. It wasn't exactly not that, but, kill him, but kill him in a way that he's not killed. Punish him in a way that he's not killed, so that he's relieved of the burden of that horrible sin. What a horrible sin. Right. And his opulence, the jewel on his top knot, taken from him. His wealth, his honor, and his prestige taken away from him without physically killing him. So Arjuna understood. And that was the test. It wasn't a non-trusting relationship between Krishna and Arjuna. So don't get the wrong idea of what test means or examining means. Or fearlessness.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Sorry, I'm saying.
You got the microphone. Go ahead, use it.
Thank you. Guru Maharaj, I was thinking about Mataji's question about
Which one? She's asked many.
spiritual master, a different breed. So I'm thinking about the different angle. I think Mataji was also mentioning about it. You have been talking how spiritual master cares even for personal material needs of the disciples.
I'm just following her lead. She led that direction. She led the discussion in that direction.
Other angle is when we're dealing with, I mean, I don't want to say less advanced, probably peers who are younger than us, it's easier to relate and, empathize with their material or emotional problems. But if it is spiritual master or the senior disciples, it's like, oh, they're anyway very advanced and their body is transcendental. So one example you just mentioned about Lord Chaitanya, he is the Supreme Lord, but still he has indigestion, and this disciple actually is serving in that way. So just would like to hear, how do we, when they're going through some material or emotional anything,
You. Or
The
you're
senior-
somebody you know.
senior disciples or the spiritual master or very elevated.
When a senior
devotees.
disciple of the spiritual master is going through some turbulence, how are you as a lesser person to relate to that? That's your question?
Yeah, not idealizing or saying they're transcendental, so I don't have to bother, but still express our feelings and what do we do?
You know what my answer is going to be. It depends. There's no cookie cutter answer to this one. And like many other things, there's no cookie cutter answer. And so the depends means you have to look at the variables. It means you have to have intelligence, because intelligence can discern one thing from another thing. There's you and there's the person. There's your relationship with the person. There's the person, there's the circumstance, and there's, their emotions and how you could make the situation worse rather than better. So it depends. There's no cookie cutter answer for this one. The starting point is the spiritual conception of life. And empathy, the spiritual kind, I'm thinking of Sri Radhika's use of the term, but a spiritual sense of empathy. And, this advanced devotee must be undergoing some hardship. Then depends on what the situation and so forth and so on. And it also depends on how that elder person to you, is situated in their relationship with Krishna. So Krishna's giving, one thing is Krishna's giving them, that this more advanced than you person, an opportunity to strengthen their relationship with Krishna. So you can feel happy for them because they're getting such mercy. And in a transcendental perspective, then you start doing, so you approach such a situation depending upon the variables mentioned in a mood of service on the spiritual platform for starters, but then you can also look at the holistic picture of what this person may, what may be helpful besides their spiritual, for their physical, emotional, and etc. well-being. And you may not have an answer, but if you're thinking along those lines, you're more likely to get the answer than if you're not thinking along those lines. The mood of service. And then Krishna may inspire you, but at least you're in that mood of service on the, with spiritual at the center, spiritual conception at the center, and the holistic picture surrounding that. So then what can I do? In the mood of service, what would be an appropriate expression of service? You may not have the answer, once again, but you maintain that mood and you're prayerful to Krishna to help you have the intelligence so that this other individual will feel your care and our conventional words like support and all that, those nice things. And if you're just carrying that mood, that's substantial. And when the time is right, Krishna will prompt you from within. Up front, Shri Rupa. Just pass it. Okay, you got the mic. You've got the mic. You've got one too. You go ahead. I saw you first. She's in the front row. What can we do?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I just was wondering if you could comment on Lord Chaitanya's reciprocation with two devotees, or three devotees. So, Sanatan Goswami versus Chota Haridas, the whole suicide
Yeah,
thing.
somebody asked that question the other day.
And
What was the kind of relationship? How should we take the Chota Haridas situation? Remember that question? And I said tomorrow, and I didn't get to it.
Oh.
But you're reminding me.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it was you were asking the question.
No, I don't.
And then so Chota Haridas, and the third?
The other one was Chota Haridas versus Kal Krishna Das. I think that was his name. Yeah.
Kala Krishnadas or Kali?
The one
Das.
that left Lord Chaitanya's association and he dragged him back.
Okay. And when he literally dragged him by the hair. So your question, what's the preamble? The preamble is, what's the difference?
Yeah. Like
Or what was the particulars? What's the uniqueness about each one? Or what's your question?
I just like Lord Chaitanya reciprocated with them in different ways. Like it was different the way
It certainly was.
Yeah. So I just wanted to.
You want to hear some more?
Yeah.
Do you remember? This is Soka Krishna is not with us. I can't remember the phrase, but a particular verse from Antya Lila chapter 4, where Lord Chaitanya is discussing with Haridas and Sanatan Goswami about his relationship with Jagatananda compared to Lord Chaitanya's relationship with Sanatan Goswami. And Lord Chaitanya makes a statement that according to affection, there's going to be reciprocation with affection, and thus differences of relationships. But it doesn't mean you're an insider and you're an outsider, because affection is displayed and exchanged differently. So it's not like because I'm chastising Jagatananda, therefore that means he's an insider, and because I speak kindly toward you, you're an outsider. Meaning, if you're an insider, then I could say some strong things to you because you're an insider and you can take it. And, there's that relationship. So it's the message, it feeds into your question. Relationships differ because of different kinds of affection between the served and the servitor, or the servitor and the served. There are different kinds of relationships. I'm looking at the clock because people look getting restless or something. But we're supposed to go to 1 o'clock. Has that changed? That's still the schedule. Okay. I sometimes just get carried away and just step on people's schedules and things like that. So the exchanges are different because the affection towards him was different. And because of the relationship, Lord Chaitanya may want to teach either that person or others through that person a particular lesson. And that seems to be primarily the case, teach others through Chota Haridas a particular lesson. In other words, so for those who are not familiar with the Chota Haridas story, there was an apparent transgression, at least something that Mahaprabhu perceived, that Chota Haridas was dilly-dallying with a lady. He was gathering some ingredients for preparing lunch from a particular elderly lady, longer than it should have been, and when Mahaprabhu was taking the prasad, he asked where the ingredients come from, and he was told where it came from. And so, Chota Haridas shouldn't come see me again, ever again. I never want to see his face again. One who dilly-dallies, a renounced person who dilly-dallies with ladies, I don't even want to see his face. Ooh. And eventually he gave up his life. Because if I'm banished by Mahaprabhu, what's the use of, so he gave up his life, he drowned himself. And everyone was so sorry, and Mahaprabhu said, good. There's the dilly-dallying with ladies has, for a renounced person, has no business. And that this is the proper decision he made. Very good. So he is like, oh, really intense. But then later, it is said, Chota Haridas was a good singer. Mahaprabhu would go to the shore and hear him singing in his angelic form, singing for the pleasure of Mahaprabhu. So it was to demonstrate a principle that he wanted his followers to adhere and understand his seriousness about the principle. And he was engaging Chota Haridas to the extent of his giving up his life to pass on an important teaching that he wanted his followers to understand. A renounced person has no business dilly-dallying with ladies. And it's inexcusable for Mahaprabhu. But the intimacy of that relationship permitted that kind of an exchange, which is extraordinary. I mean, I can't think of anybody in our modern times that would do something like that. But he has the license, to do something like that, to teach a lesson. So Chota Haridas was chosen to teach that particular lesson in a really heavy way. And Kala Krishna Das, he became enamored by the Badaharis who were enticing him to indulge in sense gratification in a licentious way. And he went for it. He left Mahaprabhu's service. He left him alone to go join licentious people. So Mahaprabhu went and rescued him, literally dragging him by the hair. And when he came back to Puri, you can go wherever you like. So the kindness was rescuing him, and then it was another kindness because of the circumstance, and also presumably teaching lessons. With Chota Haridas, it's explicit. With Kala Krishna Das, it's implied, implicit. The person should understand when you're going to serve an exalted person like Mahaprabhu, you don't mess around. It's reprehensible. So instead, at the appeal of the associates of Mahaprabhu, he was given another service. Go to Navadvip, inform everybody Mahaprabhu's back, and tell him of his travels, and share those wonderful Mahaprabhu stories with everybody. So he felt honored after that period of being cast out. And Jagadananda is Jagadananda. He's in a class by himself. Who can understand Jagadananda? Intimate associate. That since childhood they had such relationship, where he would do things and say things and go and pout, and Mahaprabhu would go and pamper him, and Jagadananda had to oblige what Mahaprabhu wanted because of his affection for him. Anyway, it's a totally unique relationship. Totally unique. One of a kind.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, yesterday you mentioned you are considering including Vaishnav etiquette as a requirement for Brahman Diksha. So it's sparked my interest, and I had a few questions around that. First, I started thinking, how do you actually measure whether one has Vaishnav etiquette or not? And then I was thinking that probably it's like Bhakti Shastri. You have a course and you complete it, and that's, you consider that you have made you got some training and education by
it's
completing.
a step in the direction, at least.
Mm-hmm. Probably it'll be a course. No, just like
It's notional at this stage. It may never happen.
Oh, okay.
It's something. I believe something should be done. What it might look like, and all those kinds of things. It may stop as a notion. One of the possibilities is something that's done in China. The one of the two GBCs is Chandrasekhar Prabhu, who graduated from the Gurukula, ISKCON Gurukula in Mayapur many years ago, and then became a GBC. So he has that kind of training, or Brahminical training. So he has ideas that he put together in what he calls, or they call, a self-study. So it's kind of a manual, and you're asked to study the manual before receiving second initiation. But it's from my recollection of looking at it some years ago or some time ago, it's a lot of rules of the ways to do things that a strictly trained brahmana will do, this and then that and then the other rules, which is not what I'm looking for personally. I'm looking for character. So how do you have a course to teach us character? Anyway, so there may be some self-study, I don't know what, maybe it won't happen, maybe read some material, write an essay, what you think, then it becomes theoretical. How do you get it practical? Because character is practical, it's not just an exam, a written exam. I'm not sure how to do it. I plan to pursue it little by little. An educator that I found is, anyway, a resource I'll likely go to is Irmila, because she's strict, but she's also a wise educator. And wise educators can also be strict. And I might not do things as she would do things, but she's a really thoughtful person. So, find some other people and see what, if they have some suggestions, or if they know of some, Vaishnava etiquette curriculum or something. Let's see. I've been too busy just keeping my head up above water. It's been a marathon. Whew. Next.
Shubhra Mata sent me, she would like me to ask a question on her behalf.
Okay.
It is from a slide that you showed. I'm not sure which class this was, sorry. It was internal absorption in the person being served, Drida Tara Bhakti. And in small letters, it said Anushilanam, or continuous service, has an active form, Cheshta Rupa and Bhavarupa. So
I remember that.
Okay, thank you. The question that she has written, and to be honest, I don't understand the question, so I'm going to just read it. The question is from the above slide, while explaining the word Anushilanam, the bhajan, Rupa consists of Priti and Vishad. Vishad, or feeling of utter hopelessness, is seemingly opposite of the feeling of affection. How is one to understand and redirect despair in Drada Tara Bhakti? What is the despair of the mind referred in this context, and how one redirects that?
It's indicating if I've understood her question correctly, and I also am not sure I've understood her question correctly. It seems that the connection is a kind of intense humility. It's ashabandha, kind of hope against hope. I'm disqualified, I'm unqualified. Look at me, you find no good qualities, and yet I'm asking anyways. I'm shameless. That kind. A very profound and genuine, not cosmetic, kind of humility. Thus, amplifying the sense of a calling for mercy, not in a state where I'm catatonic, but in a state where I'm actively striving, but I recognize my shortcomings, my limitations. That kind, a profound humility, reaching out. Not just wanting to be carried, like a baby is carried by mother, but wanting mercy, eagerness for mercy. That kind. If I've understood her question correctly.
Marj, can we do one more online?
I don't know, why not?
Marj, this is from Anup Prabhu. He was asking, how do we know if the events that take place in our life, are they a result of our past karma manifesting, or are they Krishna's plan?
Depends on whether you're in the internal potency or the external potency. It depends. And generally speaking, we're in a mixed position. We're not pure devotees, but we're not non-devotees. For non-devotees, it's one. For pure devotees, it's the other. And for mixed devotees, it's a mix. In the mix, it's not like it's 100% karma over here, and then the next moment is... Rather, there's a token reminder of our past deeds while we're under the care of the internal potency. So everything depends, the answer to this question, it depends on one's regard for that place of shelter, which was the theme of yesterday's classes, morning and evening, morning and midday, and then this morning. Exploring what our real shelter is, the strength of our real shelter. So it's proportionate to. We have 40 minutes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. It's been ecstatic all the 3 days. I'm in divine somewhere else. But yeah, thank you. So I have a hunting question.
You have a
Not
what
just
question?
like beating. I have a hunting question.
Hunting?
Mm.
That's
So-
against our principles, you know.
So Maharaj, like reading Bhagavatam, it's really eye opener. But there are so many personalities. For me, I feel so blessed to hear those personalities like Vidura and Narada.
I'm waiting for the but.
So can you please relate any of the personalities in Chaitanya Charitamrita or in Kali Yuga where we can relate to those kind of personalities like Narada and Vidura, who can guide us continuously in our life, saying it is right, it is wrong, do this, do that. So can you please elaborate on that?
Well, cookie cutter answers are not Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's a flavor and there's like we just, this prior question, one of the prior questions. There's flavors of relationships, and it's when should not be take a cookie cutter approach to those relationships because they're different, customized for the person and their regard for Mahaprabhu. So you're looking for an articulation of Narada Muni-like personalities in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and can I narrate some? This seems like what you're asking, yes?
Yes.
Well, we spent, not just me, but the other speakers, we spent the whole Christmas called the Winter Retreat discussing exactly that. Exactly that. Everyone spoke on exactly that topic. So, did you hear any of those classes?
I heard your lectures, Maharaj.
So, hear them again. And there are other speakers that have their mood and their approach to those topics. And I was told, because I was busy preparing mine, that they were inspirational. Yeah. And not in amongst Mahaprabhu's associates, they weren't necessarily Narada Muni-like figures. They may have been, from a different angle. Jamuna Jivana, for example, spoke on King Prataparudra, and King Prataparudra wasn't a Narada Muni figure. He was a king, but he was challenged by the fact that he was a king, but he was a great devotee. He was a great devotee and a powerful king. As a warrior, he was powerful. He expanded his kingdom, beyond even what his father had done, which was, anyway, he was a powerful Kshatriya and a very soft devotee. So it's not a Narada Muni figure, but he was tested again and again and again and again and again. And Mahaprabhu gave us mercy. And the game changer, at least in the Leela, not like Mahaprabhu was playing a game with him, but the game changer was this humble service of sweeping the street, the grand road before Jagannath with a broom. Menial service to Lord Jagannath was the game changer. At least the way that Krishnadas Kaviraj writes it. Then Mahaprabhu gave him, opened the door for externally giving mercy that he was giving him all along. So, Gaur Leela is filled with those kinds of things. So, to make it easy on me, just because the question is very broad, listen to those recordings, listen to the others, and see how their mood of how they expressed what they expressed. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
I was thinking about Raghav's question from the other day, or maybe yesterday, I can't remember which, about why didn't the kings pray for the goal instead of the process? And if I understood correctly, part like a facet of your answer was like
They had to qualify themselves to
Yeah.
attain the goal.
unless they have qualification, then they can't attain that. So I was based on that. One, I was wondering, what does the term causeless mercy mean to us? And then in that connection, in CC, it describes that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took all the moving and living in spiritual sky, and Krishna did the same thing, and then Ram did the same thing with everyone from Ayodhya. So, how do we understand that? Yeah.
Well, one way to answer your question is sometimes that did happen. He just bestowed. The common, I just heard Prabhupada explain this, the common way of getting a PhD is this and this and this and this and this and this. Sometimes universities may bestow a PhD without having gone through this and this and this and this. So sometimes Krishna does like that. Sometimes Mahaprabhu did like the causeless mercy was like with Jagai Madhai. But there was some, requirement, don't do this again. They didn't do sadhana. They got some very special mercy. And they recognized it as very special mercy, and they didn't go back to their old ways later on. But their contrition or their repentance for their previous ways manifested for the rest of their lives. And so that's a manifestation of causeless mercy. And the very fact that Mahaprabhu gave liberally the holy name to everybody means, like their modern phrase, the equal opportunity organization. The Hare Krishna movement, everyone can chant. But there's no, it's causeless mercy. What's the qualification of the person who receives the holy name? Nothing. Disqualification, abundant. But, it's still a sadhana. Because otherwise, back to Raghava's question, in my response saying there has to be eligibility, because even if one is given the fruit, they're not going to recognize it. Even if given the fruit, they're not going to recognize it unless there's some eligibility. Now, one of the things that happened in the Jagai Madhai story is one of the two brothers, one that didn't throw the pot, he fell at the feet of Mahaprabhu. When he saw that, the Sudarshan chakra raised in his hand, he fell at the feet of Mahaprabhu. And because his brother fell at the feet of Mahaprabhu, then the one who threw the pot understood, that my existence is at risk. So he then followed his brother. So, mercy was given, but there was also a condition. So when we say causeless mercy, what does that mean? It means being given an opportunity. But supposing, okay, I have the opportunity, and with the opportunity is gold. But supposing I don't understand how to utilize gold properly, likely I'll misuse it. Therefore, some qualification, even with causeless mercy.
So, can we assume that maybe the living entities that Mahaprabhu brought back to the spiritual sky had some type of qualification?
Yeah.
And they were inserted there
Yes.
specifically to fulfill that
Yes.
Leela, I guess?
Yes. We can conclude that. Now, in some cases, go back to the causeless mercy, in some cases he made them qualified. Which goes back to, Raghava's question. Why not everyone just get the causeless mercy? Why have anyone become qualified first? Because it's not that's not in the power of Mahaprabhu, but the person who receives the causeless mercy, then it can slip and become proud and so many other things, minus the qualifying oneself. The Prabhupada would often say, Krishna made the requirement, surrender to me, and I'll do this. Mahaprabhu didn't say surrender to me, just said do this, chant the holy name. And you become happy, you become freed from your sinful reactions. Now, we know from practicing Krishna Bhakti, it's not mechanical. It's not a vending machine. So there's something that's required from our side, even with causeless mercy of Lord Chaitanya. That's my point.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yes.
So you're saying some of them, he just made them qualified, basically.
I'm saying that someone made them qualified?
Some of the living entities, Mahaprabhu just made them qualified.
Yeah.
So I've kind of been thinking about this, like based on this pastime, I guess what's our Gaudiya conception of free will? Because it seems like it could be a violation of the living entity's free will to give them prema, which, maybe they don't want prema. And
this is a college question. I call them college question.
Because some people, that's something that if someone's interested in spirituality, they might kind of ask what our conception of free will is. And as far as I'm concerned, it's still unclear based on this pastime.
I'm trying to think of one of those, sometimes people ask, can you think of a scriptural example where Lord Chaitanya gave his causeless mercy and someone said no? One little section of the 10th canto comes to mind, where the Sanskrit words spoken by Krishna to the washerman and the Sanskrit words spoken to the weaver who gave the decorations, exactly the same as Sanskrit words were spoken by Krishna to both. So there was a free will, the operative free will principle. Although it's, the all-merciful, all-powerful, all-purifying Supreme Lord, giving his association to those living entities, but they still had free will. The causeless mercy was bestowed and one said no and the other said yes. Service, please. Now, Sudama, the florist, was different. He had already seen Krishna. You know that story? Anyone here not know the story? Sudama the florist. Florists, during those times, they're depending upon, it's not like they have a big, like, garden in the backyard somewhere or something. They would go here and there and gather flowers. And then with those flowers, they would make floral arrangements and garlands and things. So Sudama, the florist, came to know that not far away from Mathura, in Vrindavan, there's lots of nice flowers. So from time to time, he would venture over there. And one time when he was over there, he saw Krishna. And he was stunned. He forgot his flower picking business and was just enamored with the beauty of Krishna. And he thought, one day maybe I can make a nice garland for Krishna. Then when he heard, so he had that anticipation of meeting Krishna and offering. When he heard that Krishna had come to Mathura, he was over the top with, maybe he'll come to my floral shop, which was his home, and I can make a garland. So he had a garland waiting for him hanging on the wall each day. It's like a little like Shabari waiting for Ram to come because her guru said one day he'll come. So she was waiting. Sudama the florist was waiting. When Krishna came, it was like, this is it, some service. So my point is, my memory is, it was the weaver and the washerman heard the same words from Krishna. It would be very kind of you if then that render some service. So even when there's transcendental kindness being given, there's still free will operative. So it doesn't discount free will. Even mercy is given. It still requires someone to say yes instead of no.
So what qualified the living entities that received Mahaprabhu's mercy is that they didn't reject it, like the fishermen or the Muslim horsemen?
Yes. Then there's degrees of not saying no. That one can say, okay, or one can say, going up the scale. The florist was, take anything you want. My life is yours. Okay.
Gurumaharaj, we have an online question from Giri Govardhan Mataji. This is, among all the Vaishnava qualities or conduct, what are a few qualities that you would personally like to see in your disciples?
How much time do we have?
We have 20 minutes, Maharaj.
By my training, I'm thinking of scriptural references. But I think that, knowing Giri Govardhan, she's not just wanting scriptural references, she wants to know something on the personal side. But, my life is Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, so what can I do? Three references come to mind. The top of the list is Shikshastika 3. And coming down the list a little bit is the concluding verses of chapter 12. One who has this quality, that quality, the other quality, they're very dear to me. Then a third list down the line is from chapter 13, verses 8 through 12. Fundamental, aside from lists, fundamental is the principle of respect and service unto Vaishnavas, or say it the opposite, when there's the absence or weakness or fluctuation even of fundamental respect to other Vaishnavas, it's very disturbing. Fundamental disrespect to other Vaishnavas. What to speak of fundamental disrespect to our founder Acharya? It's intolerable, and it happens. So then what does respect mean? It means, one of the things it means is you look up. So then you naturally you look up to those who are worthy of you being looked up to. They're trustworthy, they're respect worthy. But supposing somebody's in the not yet mature stage or the unsteady stage of bhakti, how do you respect those persons? Because sometimes they're acting in a way that's respectable, and sometimes they're acting in a way that's not so okay. Respect otherwise. Respect anyways. Respect because bhakti is within their heart, and there's etiquettes to be observed when bhakti is in the heart of someone, and you don't criticize. That's it's an offense against the holy name, sadhu ninda. Okay, then who's sadhu? Sadhu is someone who's a devotee, someone who worships the personality of Godhead. So then there's varieties and varieties and varieties and subtles and things, but those are some fundamental things.
Raj, can I ask a question? Raj, this is like extremely personal. It's regarding my initiated name. Before you gave me the name, and I had never heard the name Hrishta before.
Nor had your mother.
Yeah, I don't think any of us.
Your mother was really bewildered. What's that?
So, Maharaj, did you come across the name in like a scripture?
I liked it. I felt it fit.
Thank you.
That's all.
I like it.
Krishna Maharaj, I just wanted to ask, how do you feel receiving the emails on sadhana reports, monthly sadhana reports?
I feel with my hands. It's been a long weekend. Haribo Madhukanta, you're chuckling away over there. You're muted, that's okay.
No, I just want to offer my most humble obeisances to you and thank you for your kindness in giving me the eternal gift of initiation. I really am blessed by you.
He's got a nice name too. Madhukanta. You know the meaning. By now you know the meaning. You didn't know when you heard it, just like she didn't know the meaning when she heard her name. But now you know the meaning. He's an elevated person. He's got pearls of transcendental inspiration. And you're Madhukanta Das.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Eternally.
Eternally. So now let's go back to your question. Say your question again. I lost track. Short.
Want to check how do you feel receiving the sadhana reports, monthly sadhana?
I don't have time for it. That's how I feel about it. I don't read them. I ask people that want to send them, please don't send them. I don't have time. You want to send it to somebody, find somebody that will have the time. I don't. You know, it's nice. I used to have time. I used to do that. I used to ask for it. I don't have time. Thank you.
Maharaj, can we take one more online?
Yeah.
Maharaj, this is by Sachi Mata Mataji. Of all your god brothers and god sisters, Guru Maharaj, which one do you find most inspiring?
Oh. I'm not going to answer that question. Something else?
Yes, Maharaj. We have from Rutul. We don't know if it's a Prabhu or Mataji. Rutul Prabhu. Are you planning to write a book on your personal journey of Krishna consciousness?
No, I'm not planning that. Next.
Guru Maharaj, I felt really enlivened seeing that slide you showed during your Vyasa Puja address with the 3 points you'd like to focus on. I know the second was holistic devotee care, the third was culture and etiquette. I forget what the first was.
I don't remember the slide. Well, say it again, slower.
During your Vyasa Puja address, you showed a slide that had a blue background, and it talked of 3 areas of focus.
Does anybody else remember?
Marge, you said that this is a summary slide of what you want to share as a message from Vyasa Puja.
Okay.
And, you know, the last.
I'll go back and look at the PowerPoint. I can send you the whole PowerPoint if you want, or just the slide. But I don't remember what those 3 points were. Huh? Speak louder.
I vaguely remember that first one was connecting through heart and mind, along those lines.
My specific, I was enlivened to see that was the summary of your Vyasa Puja address. You know, it is your most important address, I take it, for the year, and it sets the course for us for the year. And I was thinking of how to make sure these are my learning objectives from you for the year. And I was hoping that some of our retreats this year perhaps can focus on some of these themes. Of course, you know, you mentioned one way you're thinking of bringing home Vaishnava etiquette is to have a course for those who are going to take second initiation. The other way that I personally enjoy very much is when, like for instance, this morning, the way you massage Draupadi's empathy, or the way in winter retreat, these points of culture and etiquette really were massaged and brought home for us through scripture. I personally enjoyed the Maharaj Prataparudra presentation because it brought home how the devotees came together to provide care to Maharaj Prataparudra so he could successfully pass his test.
By the way, I had a separate presentation on that topic, other than your husband's. There were some overlapping points, but just for your information. Someday.
And
there's a slide.
And I'm personally really looking forward to the Ramayan, Gita Nagari retreat, because especially every time I've heard Ramayan from Nityananda Pran Prabhu, these points of etiquette and culture and how the loving relationships provide holistic devotee care are really brought home for me. So this is a suggestion I want to submit for your consideration. If some of our retreats can bring home these 3 learning objectives for us.
Well, good news. I do it. Intuitively, not necessarily by design. Because, what's inside comes out. So these are points that are inside. And while I, didn't remember what the slide said and somebody captured it and is showing it, it's what's inside. So it's going to come out. It's going to come out. But in the manner in which it will come out, most likely, is going to be like what you heard this morning. Something that is already inside, and then something inspires something that's inside, and then it comes out. Without hey, what's a good way to do this one? It'll come out. Because being inspired by, particularly for me, Srimad Bhagavatam. I love Srimad Bhagavatam. I carry Srimad Bhagavatam inside. And, I may not remember all the names of all the personalities. Like we struggled a little yesterday about Sudama, Krishna's coward boyfriend, and what are the particulars. I didn't have the time, didn't go back and look. But I do know that one of his coward boyfriends is Sudama. So, particulars are nice. And that it adds to the flavor and the sweetness and the variety and all those nice things, the happiness that Krishna or Lord Chaitanya or his associates feel. It just adds to the sweetness and the joy. But, directionally, those topics will most likely come out without necessarily a designed plan. And I can say, for you and for anybody else, some of this, since the class yesterday, some of this has come out already. Just in, when discussions I'm having and giving training to devotees about their lives and how their lives are interacting with others, and to help guide them and how to amplify those qualities and how to customize those qualities according to their life and their circumstance. And that's a function, a lifelong function. Just like this Founderacharya book says, it's not just giving initiation, it's lifelong caring for people in the holistic sense. At the center of the holistic sense is their spiritual conception of life and making choices and living their life with a spiritual conception of life, which gives protection from the harassment that comes from just being in the material world, and the duality and the this and the that's. They're this part of the territory. But to speak of the guna and karma, features of any given individual, as the whole place itself is turbulent. So the holistic conception doesn't negate, but it's the spiritual conception doesn't negate holistic, and holistic doesn't negate, the other needs of the individuals. But we have to keep the spiritual conception at the center. Then the rest can be effective.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have a question from the winter retreat. Maybe you would have covered, but I missed this section. Why was Sanatan Goswami felt the Prime Minister job that he performed was sinful?
Why did he consider it was sinful?
Yes, Maharaj.
Because he was serving a man that was sinful. And the man that was sinful did sinful things. And he's serving a man who's doing sinful things. Bad. Yeah. He was compromised by that sinful association, thus carrying some of the sinfulness of that, and his whole community rejected him. The Brahmana community rejected him for that reason. And he wasn't feeling, hey, I'm not this body. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So my question is regarding holistic devotee care. I think
holistic devotee care.
Devotee care, yeah.
Okay.
So I believe you are referring to like a character or quality the devotee should